Hey, this is LaMondre with Root Global Impact, and I'm here with Debra, the CEO of Root Global Impact, and we are celebrating. What are we celebrating? We are celebrating 30 years of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we just want to have a conversation about what this monumental piece of the legislation, of civil rights legislation, means not only for people with disabilities, but what it means for the country, what it means for the USA, but also what it means globally. And we're going to take a look at some of the history in it. We're going to look at where we are now, but we're also going to see what does that mean for tomorrow. And I am so excited to have this conversation, particularly with you, Debra, because as you know, in the work that we do, we are for promoting and ensuring the rights and access for people with disabilities. And so with that in mind, from your perspective, what does the ADA mean for people?
Well, the ADA is such important legislation, and I join you and everyone to celebrate 30 years. Yay! 30 years. And of course, bear in mind that it's not just 30 years. There were so many advocates that fought and fought and fought and fought and fought for this act to be put in place.
Right.
So all those people that came before that fought for their rights and our rights. And I think the ADA is so important to everyone, but I have to look at it in a way from a personal perspective too, because when my daughter was born, my daughter Sarah was born in 1987, and Sarah was born with Down syndrome, and I just did not know much about the community at that time. And here I have a baby daughter that they tell me has a disability. They also told me other things like she's broken and ridiculousness stuff like that. Society did. But what I did not know at the time, LaMondre, was that there were people out there fighting for our family's rights. I just didn't know that, And so now that she's 33 years old and she's in a supported apartment of her own, and she continues to have a really good life. And all of it, she's inspired so much of my work. And then I've gotten to meet amazing people like you, LaMondre. It's hard to describe what it means to so many of us, because and I also didn't know that I would be one of the protected class members under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Right.
So I don't have a disability. Well, no, ADHD and dyslexia fall under that. And so even though I was diagnosed much, much later with those, it just continues to really make me think about what does it mean to be human, which of course is what we talk about at Root Global Impact all the time. And I remember, and I apologize for the long answer, but that's a big question. But I remember I said to you one time, LaMondre, I didn't even see your disability. And you said, well, Debra, I want you to see my disability because that's part of who I am. I want you to see, assuming you can see, I want you to know me as the entire person I am. I am a Southern man. I am an African-American man. I'm obviously speaking for you. I am a man with a visible disability. I'm a man with a huge heart. I'm a man with a mission. I'm a man. So I think that what the ADA represents to all of us is, first of all, you almost have to break human beings into these little segments. And you've got to say, well, as an African-American, Black Lives Matter. And you should have the same rights as I do as a woman that has a different color skin than you. And as you so eloquently taught me, no, Debra, see my disability. So I might say to you, what does the Americans with Disabilities Act mean to you?
I think that is it. And that was a beautiful answer, by the way. I believe it means just that. I believe it means that you can see all of me. And I think that one of the most important pieces of the ADA is that it's not just about people with disabilities. It really is about protecting all of us. And let me kind of preference that by saying this: disability is the only minority group that any one of us can join at any time. In fact, most of us will, whether that be through illness or accident, or simply through the process of aging. 99.9% of us will experience some form of disability at some point of our lives. And so if that means that so many of us will experience disability, that means that every single one of us will be impacted or affected by disability in some way, shape, or form, even if that is just by because it's a family member. And so having a law like the Americans with Disabilities Act, what it does, it sets up protections for all of us. And it says that we as a country recognize that people with disabilities have been marginalized and discriminated against, and we're not going to stand for that. We actually have something that says you are protected in this area, in this manner. So for me, the ADA is not just about protecting people with disabilities. It really is about saying what you so beautifully said, that I see you, and not only do I see you, that you deserve and are endowed with the rights just like everyone else is. And so for me, just like you, growing up with a disability and living in a world where so many times I would go to buildings, I would go someplace and I couldn't get in because I use a wheelchair, the ADA says, no, you belong in here. You can go in there. So the ADA has always been something more than a piece of legislation for me. It has always been something more than policies and regulations. The ADA for me is a key. It's a key that unlocks doors. It's a key that unlocks potential. It's a key that says that I do have access. And I mean far beyond just the physical access or the digital access. It is much more of the spirit of the law that I celebrate and that I cling to. So
Yeah,
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 it's very
beautiful,
similar.
beautiful. And you know, it's I often talk about the ADA when I used to go on global trips before COVID-19. And I would always talk about what, the ADA and what it's brought to the rest of the world. And the reality is we still are discriminating against people with disabilities in the United States every single minute of the day.
Absolutely.
We you and I talk often about all the intersectionalities of disabilities. And I, as a woman, I'm a very, very big feminist, and I believe in gender equality and gender pay equality and things like that. And as you look at it from a woman's lens, from a female lens, as a gender lens, men make more money than I do as a woman, but as a Caucasian woman, I make more money than African American women and Asian American women and women with disabilities. So you start adding those intersectionalities to these conversations, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And then you look at our peers around the world. I heard today, we were recording Access Chat, and we had a woman from Argentina, and she told me that 90% of people with disabilities in Latin America are unemployed.
Mm,
And I thought it was bad in the US. And I know we're really blessed to have our CFO, very innovative CFO, David Perez in Costa Rica, and he's working with that stuff too. But the numbers are chilling. So I think we need to celebrate the Americans with Disabilities Act and that it led to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities
right.
for all of the countries. But at the same time, there is so much work to do. And I'll say one more thing and then hand it back to you. I think we had to walk. I've had this conversation a lot, including with you, LaMondre, but I think we had to walk the path of, I'm going to dice you up into little bitty labels so that people don't discriminate against you. But now it's time to put you all back together, put us all back together, and to really look at what does it mean to be human? Because when we say things like you said earlier, the reality is this is the one minority group you can move in and out of. You can be temporarily disabled. I remember when I hurt my leg and I didn't walk for 12 weeks. And I also remember, LaMondre, that people treated me different. I was really surprised. And I should have known this, but I was surprised. They were nice. But I remember I won an award at the time, an SBA Person of the Year, and I was in
Mhm.
big walking cast, and people didn't really include me. They were nice to me, but they didn't really include me like I'm usually included. And so once again, walking in a mile in somebody else's shoes, as we say, just the undertones of discrimination that I think people don't even realize. Like, once again, my innocent comment to you, what I thought was an empowering comment. I don't see your disability. And you said, no, please, Deborah, I want you to see my disability. I don't think we're having enough of those conversations, LaMondre.
Right, right. I agree. And I think that we definitely have to keep talking about, number one, the intersectionalities that exist, but also the fact that I'm proud of who I am. I'm very proud of the fact that this is me. I have a motto, and that's live big, live full, and live authentic. And to not live as all of who I am would not be authentic. It would not be me living full. It would not be me living big. So to recognize my disability is an important piece. Now keep this in mind. It is a defining point, but it's certainly not the defining point. There are so many other aspects and factors and things that come into play that make me who I am. And something else that you said that really stood out to me when we talk about the Americans with Disabilities Act and how it has been a catalyst for disability rights throughout the globe. I think that's why we have to realize that leadership is important. That when people see you leading in a particular area or a particular field, it inspires them to do so as well. It inspires them to look at their situation and say, well, hey, maybe we can do some things different. It is fortunate that the ADA has been a very positive thing for people with disabilities, and other areas of the world have started to take notice of that and really start to advance in that area. Now, the other piece of that is many of them have advanced further than we have. So what that tells us is that while we've made some significant strides, that we still have a lot of work to do, and that the future is now looking brighter than it ever has before. And I know 2020, it may not feel like that at this very moment, but I promise you that it is, because people are now recognizing that, as you said, having those conversations about being exactly who you are, showing up to the table in all of who you are, and being valued. And see, that's what the ADA does. That's the message
Well,
of the ADA. It is that, and I had a conversation with someone earlier this week, and I said to them, for some reason, we have made synonymous disability and brokenness. We have
yes,
made synonymous
yes,
difference being wrong.
right.
And the truth is, it is our diversity that gives us strength. It is our inclusiveness that makes us a powerhouse, that allows us to go further than we ever could. So I think that what the ADA has done and what it continues to do is to recognize that there is nothing missing, there is nothing broken. So therefore, the discrimination based on something being missing or being broken is not allowed. Because the reality is, I deserve equal access. The reality is, you deserve a fair and level playing field. And that's why I celebrate the ADA so much, because it allows people to see all of who we are.
And LaMondre, another thing that I love listening to you talk, because I always learn when I talk to you. And one thing I want you to, after I make this point, if you don't mind just telling the audience a little bit about your disability, because some people, they look at you and they don't see your disability because they're only seeing a part of your picture. But this idea that somehow, because a person with a disability is less. It is, I don't understand where we got that from. And it's fascinating because, as you know, we work with a lot of corporations, and corporations come to us and say, how can we take technology and make it benefit humanity, including people with disabilities? I mean, thank goodness Huawei, God bless them, they're giving us these wonderful gifts to give away. So there's so many ways corporations can support our community. But I just think about the innovations that people with disabilities have brought to society forever. But what we're seeing in the workforce, we're seeing that you are a man that uses a wheelchair. I don't use a you use a motorized wheelchair. I
Right.
don't, and you have limited use of your arms, for example. Now I'm getting to a point here, LaMondre, but you have to navigate the computers and social media and technology and connectivity in a very different way than I do. And so you can look at somebody and say, well, generally people can use their hands. And I remember even small things like when I worked with you at my old company, Tech Access, you would say to people when they came up, remember when we used to shake people's hands, LaMondre?
Right. That time long ago.
Remember that? So, and you would say, no, just give me a little fist bump. And you disarmed people with how charming you were and how I'm in this awkward social situation. What do I do? And sometimes I think as human beings, and I think this is pre-COVID too. I think human beings, before we were sent home by Mother Nature to think about what we've done, as one of my friends, Margot Joffe, said. But I think this is really a time to rethink who we really truly are and the value that we each bring. And yes, this is a time to celebrate the ADA 30, but I think it's time to do what we're doing. We need to
Yeah,
dig into the nuances. We need
absolutely.
to make sure you are in the conversations. We need to make sure other people with visible disabilities are in the conversations. And I still think we're doing a very poor job of letting people that are really walking these paths in different ways have the microphones and have the podiums.
Absolutely. And I think that that's why these conversations are so important. I think that in order for us to move forward, it's going to require understanding. And the only way you can get to understanding is by having the dialogue, not the dialogue about, but the dialogue with different people, different groups, different people who may not be dealing with the same issues that you are, or may not even have the same interests that you have, but we can learn from each other. And it's when we start that understanding, when we start that dialogue, when we start that connectiveness, then we can get into real engagement. Then we can get into real inclusion. So I think that this is a part of that important work. And to give a little bit about my disability, I have spinal muscular atrophy, which is a form of muscular dystrophy. And essentially, in terms of function, it's general muscle weakness. I really have very limited use of everything from my neck down. Now, I don't have any paralysis and I can move everything, but I can't feed myself. I can't bathe myself. I require the use of a power wheelchair. So that also means that I can't type and all those kinds of things. So I use voice technologies to run my home, to turn my lights on, to lock and unlock my doors, to control the thermostat. I even speak to my computer and I can do some mouse clicks, but in terms of using the keyboard, no, that's not going to happen. So what I've had to do was I've had to figure out and find tools and technologies that will allow me to be as productive as I can be and allow my creativity to flow in that. And honestly, I am not a unique story. My story is not exclusive. There are millions of people out there that all have to find ways of getting things done, and it's not always physical disabilities either. And so, honestly, I think that even though the world has changed dramatically in a very short period of time, what we found is that everyone has had to find new ways of doing things. Everyone has had to figure out, how can I still be productive and how can I get through this? How can I survive? And now we're moving to, how can I thrive in an environment that I'm not necessarily used to, or a world that's not necessarily created with me in mind. And
Right.
I think that we've seen some amazing advances in terms of technology, in terms of innovation, at people figuring that out. And I think a lot of industries have started to make that turn. And also organizations, technology companies that have been doing that, but now we're seeing it come to the forefront even the more so now. So this is what it's about. It's about recognizing that we are human. And to say that we're human means to say that we are diverse. We are different. we are nuanced. And the idea is to create environments where those differences, that diversity, those nuances can be seen, appreciated, and lived.
Well said, well said. And there is such beauty and innovation in diversity and creativeness. And we know this for sure. This is not something we're just saying because it's nice to say. We know this for sure. We have seen corporation after corporation after corporation employing people with disabilities and saying, "Whoa, we had these huge problems. We didn't know how to solve them." And the LaMondre came in and just said, well, this is how I deal with my day. And we see such creativeness coming out. And that's why Real Global Impact is so engaged with a lot of, technology and global corporations that are building technology. Once again, we got to have the connectivity. I know your internet went down last week and it
For days.
stopped you in your tracks. And
For
it's
days.
really right. Yeah, it's really frightening. So I think that we need to celebrate where we've come, but I also think we need to have these thoughtful conversations. And I, of course, have had many conversations with you about the Black Lives Movement during
Mm.
this time and in the United States when things are very, 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 very difficult. But at the same time, the progress that all of a sudden that we're making is stunning, but there's so much more to do. And so how do we have these conversations in a way that it's safe for us to have the conversations? Like I had told you this, I had posted something about the discrimination of hair discrimination. The state that I live in, Virginia, they passed a law that employers couldn't discriminate against people because of their hair. And I was a little confused. And I'm like, what? Why are we discriminating? What are you talking? Anyway, and I posted it, and this young lady came back and said, well, that's you showing your privilege, because if you walked in my shoes, you would understand this. And her tone, it felt a little hurtful to me. But at the same time, I felt her frustration, and that I felt she had something to teach me, but the way she approached it sort of it really stopped the conversation across the board on this particular link, because I think
Right.
people were afraid to say anything. And I actually wanted her to teach me. I wanted to learn. And that's why I posted it.
Right.
And so I was just wondering if you could help guide, because from the lens of an African American, but also as a man with a physical disability, I hear people saying children will come up and be really intrigued by somebody in a wheelchair, and their parents will say, no, 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 no. So I was just wondering if you just wouldn't address that, because I think that's an important part. It's an important part of the conversation in the time we're in now.
Absolutely. I think that we have to create safe spaces for people to learn. I think that people really learn when they can be open to express how they really think and how they really feel and what they really thought in a situation. And the example of the child coming up to somebody. I love kids because they're honest and they're open and they just ask. And more than on one occasion, I've had children come up to me and say, hey, what's wrong with your legs? Why are you in that chair? And when I began to tell them, their parents were, oh, no, 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 don't say that. Don't even stare at people. Don't look at people. And my personal approach is to say, no, no, no. Let them ask the questions. Let them look. Because here's the thing. That means that they're interested. That means that they're genuinely seeking knowledge. And if they are, I am willing to share that with them. And when we open those lines of communications, especially with children, once you say, hey, it's because I have muscular dystrophy, my muscles are not strong like yours, and no matter how much I exercise, I'm not going to get strong like you. They get it, and they're cool, and we can go on beyond that. Now, if only adults can learn that lesson, if only adults can learn the fact that it's okay to have dialogue. And just like you may be curious about something because you didn't know about it, you ask the question. If I have that knowledge, if I have that experience, I believe that it is up to me to then say, okay, so this is what it is. If if it's a situation where my goal is to truly enlighten, is to truly inform, is to truly teach. So we have to create safe environments where that true dialogue can begin to happen. I'm an optimistic person, and I believe that people are genuinely good. And I believe that they will do the right thing if they know what the right thing is to do. But in order to get to the knowledge of what the right thing is to do, you have to have the conversations. You have to be teachable, and you have to be willing to allow people to make mistakes and guide them where they're wrong and support them when they're right. You never, when a baby is learning to walk, and a baby falls down, you don't say, up, you fell down, stay down, never get up again. No, you say, hey, get back up. Let's try it again. So this is the get back up and let's try it again. This is what we've got to do. And don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I realize that different people have different functions and different people have different styles. But the thing is, if you're truly committed to making the change, you'll create the environments where it's safe for people to have those conversations. And you'll also understand, sometimes you may fall and get a boo-boo. Sometimes you may fall and scrape your knee, and sometimes it's going to hurt. But if you're committed to it, you get back up and you keep walking.
Ooh, well said, LaMondre. I think we've got a lot to do, but we do have to celebrate 30 years of the Americans with Disabilities Act. How cool is that? And yes, we got a lot of work to do, but I think, being an optimist myself, that I think we're making some progress here, LaMondre. And I'm very proud of Rue Global Impact and this diverse, amazing team that we have. 90% of people with disabilities working for our firm. Yay. And growing and thriving and adding value to conversations beyond just disability inclusion at the same time. I mean, you are our chief sustainability officer because you're qualified to do that, but also you're very, very, very committed to climate action and climate change.
Absolutely.
Really making sure we take care of climate change. So I love that we're in the big conversations, but when we're in there, do understand we are all about all human beings being included. And that's why LaMondre Pough is our chief sustainability officer. I had a friend of mine one time who was a wheelchair user, and he said, Debra, when you go into the room, you don't look like you have a disability, even though I'm at one of the classes, but still, you do not look like you have a disability. And so he said, when I walk in the room, everybody knows exactly that disability is on the table here. Now, nobody has any doubt of what we're talking about. And I thought that was such an interesting point. And I also wanted to make sure that I mentioned in this video, because you talked about it earlier, that I have been married to my husband, the father of my children, for 38 years. And we just celebrated our 40th year of meeting this year. And unfortunately, when he was a little boy, when he was 11 years old, he was hit by a drunk driver when he was just getting his kite going. And he stepped in front of the car, but the man was drunk, and so he couldn't respond. And he sustained a really, really, really bad traumatic brain injury. He died on the scene. They brought him back. He didn't go to school for months. He actually was a different person afterwards. I never knew the person before this traumatic brain injury. I married a gentle, amazing man, but he has aged into early onset dementia because of when your brain is stomped on that bad by a car, his brain's going to age differently. And so as I've walked this path with my husband becoming disabled, which maybe certainly he was always disabled because he had a traumatic brain injury. We just never thought about it that way. I think that's why, once again, sometimes we have to label things so that we even understand what we're talking about here, right? So, but it's very interesting because my husband's not broken. My husband's not useless. My husband actually is very funny, amazing, gentle, beautiful. The man that I fell in love with, he's there. But there are so many things that his brain can't do now. And so it's terrifying and horrifying and freaks me out every moment of the day. But at the same time, there's something so beautiful about the walk, and talk about staying in the moment, which we're always told about mindfulness. So just reminding the audience that, once again, it's not a threat when LaMondre said that you're probably going to join our community. It's just a fact of being human, which isn't that beautiful, that we're this fragile, beautiful, biological beings that are also spiritual beings.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important to keep this in mind that in life there'll be challenges, there're going to be changes, there're going to be ups and downs, but it's still a part of the journey. It's
Yep.
still a part of the walk. And this is why we celebrate. Yes, we still have a ton of work to do, but we've got to pause and say, wow, look where we came from. Look where we came from. We have to pause and say, you know what? We've got a lot of stuff going on right now. But
Yeah.
look at the life and the beauty of the journey that we've been on. So I even think about that when I think of you and your situation. Yeah, you got some challenges right now, and they're tough. They're tough challenges. But look at the beauty in 40 years.
Yes.
That's
And the
amazing.
growth. Don't you find, LaMondre, and I hate to say this because I don't want this to be true, but don't you find that you learn the very most during those tough times? I remember when my daughter Sarah in 2018, she got so sick. She got so sick. It was so scary. And she went in the hospital for a year. And it just was so, so, so scary. But I learned so much about who she is.
Right.
She's so much tougher cookie than I should have known. She was raised by me, but she's tough. She's tough. And she'd been asking for years to move out. And whenever the things calmed down, I was talking to my husband and I said, should we let her move out? And he's like, and it was interesting because his communication style has really been impacted by the dementia, but he was able to get this out very clearly. And he said, what she walked showed us what a strong woman she is. She is so ready, and we need to get out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. See, wow. And I think that's the thing. I think that those tough times, those things that build our muscles, those things that really make us understand what we're made of and who we are, those are the things that also give us the liberty to celebrate in a big way. Those are the things that make the victories that much more precious, that
Yeah.
makes them so much more vivid because we know the toil that went into it. We know the cost to get there. And 30 years, 30 years, it's been 30 years that the law was signed by President George Herbert Walker Bush. But you're right, Deborah. That was the culmination of thousands, millions of people coming together, and not just in the span of those 10 years, but from all over for a very long time. So that's a part of it. That's a part of it. And that's why we celebrate. That's why we
Gotta
celebrate.
celebrate.
And
Gotta
I will tell you, and I
gotta
will tell
celebrate.
you, right. And I will tell you that celebration is going to continue even after this video
Yes.
because we are actually doing a giveaway. It's amazing that we've got some wonderful partners that have partnered with Rue Global Impact, and we're going to give some things away. So we'll give details and the links associated with this video, but be on the lookout for that because we're going to party, 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 and make certain that the world knows that the ADA is now 30 years old, and we're celebrating big time.
Yes. And these are not just a $10 gift certificate. These are
Oh no.
cool, cool gifts that I wish I was eligible for because I want these things that Huawei is going to give. And these are cool gifts. So God
So
bless corporations like Huawei that care about our community.
absolutely incredible partners. And I tell you what, follow the directions that'll be attached to this video so that you can participate in the giveaway. So, Deborah, thank you so much for your time. I tell you, I am flying high right now, and I'm so happy that we've made it this far. And I'm glad that we have the opportunity to celebrate 30 years of the ADA in this way. And thank you. Thank you for your contribution and what you've done to further the cause of the rights of people with disabilities. So I appreciate you as my mentor and as my friend. And thank you for the work you do.
I appreciate you so much, LaMondre. I learned so much from you and David and Richard and our amazing team. I learn every day, and I hope to learn every day until I die. And then I'll learn what happens on the other side. So yay. Happy 8830. 8830. Let's
Absolutely.
celebrate.
Absolutely. 8830. Thank you for watching.